never imagined I'd get dumped the day after my mother-in-law's funeral by a man holding divorce papers and grinning like he won the lottery. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You were just a bridge to the money. Grab a cup of coffee, settle into your favorite spot, and let's share this story together." Before we begin, drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how our stories bring people together from all over. Now, relax and enjoy. I'm Marissa Holloway, 36 years old, third-grade teacher, and until this morning, I thought I was a wife. We had just gotten back from his mother's funeral. The house still smelled like carnations from the floral arrangements, cheap ones he picked up last minute from a grocery store near the church. I was in the kitchen, still wearing my black dress, half zipped in the back, pouring coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Not from grief, but something else. Dread. That's when Caleb walked in. No warning, just the sound of papers hitting the kitchen island. Thick, stapled, legal-looking. "Sign those," he said, all casual, like he was asking me to reorder printer ink. I stared at him. What is this? His mouth curved into the smirk I used to find charming. Now it looked like it had rotted from the inside out. "Divorce papers," he said, stretching like he'd just come home from a jog instead of burying his mother. My stomach flipped. "You're serious?" He nodded, stepping back and folding his arms, watching me like I was a project he'd just finished and didn't need anymore. "It's time, Marissa. You've served your purpose." My throat tightened. "What purpose?" He shrugged like it was obvious. "You were a placeholder, a bridge until the real money came in." I could feel the blood drain from my face. "Excuse me?" He held up his phone, pulled up a banking app, turned the screen toward me. "Look at that number. Mom's account's just transferred. Over 500 million. I'm set. You were temporary." That word, temporary, hit me harder than the funeral, harder than any punch to the gut could. "You're serious," I said again, but it came out flat this time. A whisper more than a question. He leaned on the island like this was just another chat. "I played the part. Supportive husband, loving son. You helped me keep it all together for Mom's sake. She never suspected a thing." My coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered against the tile. The sound didn't even make him flinch. "Is that why you married me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Because I had savings? Because I could play the part of the doting daughter-in-law?" He shrugged again. "You were stable. You had a job, a good reputation. You made me look good. But I don't need any of that now." I was shaking. Full body, hands, voice, soul. "Your mother just died," I snapped. "And you're already cashing her out like a slot machine?" He rolled his eyes. "Don't get self-righteous. She didn't leave anything to you, if that's what you're hoping. I'm her only child. Everything's mine. She told me so before she went." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the divorce papers back in his face, but my voice was buried under 100 things: shock, sadness, humiliation. Instead, I sat down, quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw what I hadn't wanted to see for months: arrogance, entitlement, emptiness. He never loved me. He loved the life I helped him pretend to have. "Why now?" I asked. "Why today?" He laughed. "Why not? You've served your purpose, Marissa. I don't need a teacher's salary or your savings account anymore. I have $500 million. I'm done pretending." I picked up the papers. The ink was still slightly smudged from where he must have signed them last night, probably after the funeral. I imagined him at the kitchen table, all somber by candlelight, but only mourning his bank balance finally growing. "Do you really think you've won?" I asked. His smile widened. "Already did." I stood, walked past him, slowly, deliberately. My hand brushed the doorframe. The air in the house felt stale now, like something had died, and not just his mother. I paused in the hallway, turned to look at him one last time. "You have no idea what you've just done," I said. He chuckled. "Oh, Marissa, don't embarrass yourself. You've got nothing." I walked out of that room, out of that house, with nothing but the keys to my car and my purse. No yelling, no slamming doors, no last-minute pleas. Because what he didn't know, what he never cared enough to ask, is that his mother didn't trust him. And she didn't leave him $500 million. I stepped into my car, shut the door, and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My mascara was smudged, my lips pale. My hair was a mess from the drizzle outside, but my eyes, clear, focused. I turned the ignition and whispered, more to myself than anyone else. But Caleb had no idea. That money, it wasn't his. 4 years ago, I was someone else. Someone with a life, a rhythm, a plan. Someone with Danny. My first husband wasn't flashy. He didn't make grand speeches or surprise me with diamond bracelets. He made breakfast on Saturdays. He rubbed my feet when I came home from parent-teacher conferences. He picked up my dry cleaning even when I forgot to ask. Danny worked maintenance at the Riverside chemical plant in Columbus. Long shifts, hard hours. But he never complained. Just said, "We'll get that house one day, Riss. Give me time." We were saving for a small place near Westerville, something with a front porch and room for a dog. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Until the call came. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had lunch duty that day and was standing outside the cafeteria watching kids throw baby carrots at each other. My phone rang, unknown number, and I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Is this Marissa Holloway?" "Yes." "This is Officer Landon with the Columbus Fire Department. There's been an explosion at Riverside. Your husband, Danny Holloway, was working in the facility today." I don't remember much after that. Just the sound of my own heartbeat and a feeling like the ground opened up and swallowed me whole. Danny was gone. A gas leak. One spark. They said he probably didn't feel a thing, like that was supposed to comfort me. I sat in our tiny apartment for days, staring at the TV while it played commercials for yogurt and car insurance. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. The air felt thick, like it had weight, like the world was pressing down on me just to see how far I'd bend before I snapped. People brought casseroles, left them at the door. I hated the sound of the microwave after that. The settlement came faster than I expected. Between Danny's life insurance and a company payout, I received $400,000. I still remember the man in the suit handing me the envelope like he was dropping off dry cleaning. "This won't bring him back," he said, like I didn't already know that. I wanted to burn it. I wanted to rip the check into 1,000 pieces and scream that money doesn't fix a missing toothbrush or an empty bed. But I didn't, because grief is expensive. I went back to work after 3 weeks. Some parents complained that I wasn't smiling enough. One of the kids in my class, Tommy, asked me if I was sad because I lost my puppy. "No," I said. "I lost my person." I didn't correct him when he told the class I was married to a firefighter who exploded. It was easier to let the truth stay blurry. I opened a new bank account, moved the money into savings, and left it alone. I didn't touch a dime for months. I just went to work, came home, heated up leftovers, and stared at the walls. I got used to silence, used to waking up at 3 a.m. and reaching for a body that wasn't there. Used to brushing my teeth while crying and wiping it away before anyone noticed. Widowhood is strange. People treat you like a cracked vase. They mean well, but their eyes linger too long. Their words are too soft, too cautious. Like they're afraid touching your sadness might get it on them. But I was functioning. Teaching. Paying rent. Answering emails. Smiling on command. That's survival, right? Eventually, I moved into a smaller apartment. Just one bedroom this time. Sold our couch, gave away our dishes, donated Danny's coats, kept only one shirt of his in the back of the closet. Gray, soft, still smelled like him until it didn't. I started running, slowly. 5 blocks at first, then 10. Not because I liked it, just because it hurt, and I needed a pain that wasn't emotional for once. By the end of that first year, I had memorized every step between my apartment, the school, and the grocery store. That was my triangle. I didn't color outside the lines, didn't date, didn't make new friends. I couldn't handle people who wanted to fix me. I didn't want fixing. I wanted Danny. Then came Caleb. It was at an education conference in Cincinnati. I was there to lead a session on classroom structure. I was dreading it. I almost skipped the mixer afterward, but I needed a glass of wine and something that didn't smell like cafeteria pizza. He approached me like he already knew me. "Teacher energy," he said with a grin. "You've got it, calm but fierce." I smiled, maybe for the first time in months. He was funny, relaxed, said he was a physical therapist, mostly working with injured runners and football kids. He made small talk feel effortless. He didn't flinch when I mentioned Danny. "I lost my dad to cancer," he said quietly. Sometimes grief turns you inside out. I remember looking at him and thinking, finally, someone who gets it. We didn't fall into each other right away. It was more like I let him circle the edges of my pain for a while, then slowly opened the door. He was kind. He texted good morning every day, showed up with soup when I had a cold. He said all the right things without sounding like he was trying. He asked about Danny, but not too much, enough to show he cared. And for the first time in years, I started thinking, maybe I wasn't broken beyond repair. Maybe there could be another chapter. He was all charm, all sympathy, and I let my guard down. It was the kind of conference I usually hated. Windowless hotel ballrooms, dry chicken and steamed carrots for lunch, name tags that peeled off halfway through the day. A dozen sessions on curriculum design, parent communication, and building a trauma-informed classroom. I'd given that same presentation 3 years in a row. I could do it in my sleep, but that year, I was barely present. It had been 13 months since Danny died. I was functioning, sure, grading papers, attending staff meetings, even cracking the occasional joke in the teacher's lounge. But inside, I was still living in grayscale. Like life had color once, and I'd misplaced it. I almost skipped the evening mixer. I was planning to eat a granola bar in my hotel room and scroll Zillow listings for houses I'd never buy. But the buzz of chatter coming from the hotel bar pulled me in. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted to feel normal for one night. I ordered a glass of Pinot and found a quiet corner by the fake fireplace. That's when I saw him. He was leaning against the bar, chatting with the bartender like they were old friends. He had that easy kind of charm, relaxed shoulders, just the right amount of stubble, a navy sweater over a white button-down, clean but casual. Our eyes met for a second, and he raised his glass slightly, like a silent hello. I looked away. I wasn't in the mood. But a few minutes later, he was standing in front of me, grinning. "You look like you needed a rescue," he said. I gave a polite smile. "Just hiding from laminated name tags." He laughed. "You and me both." He slid into the seat beside me like we'd done this before. I should have shut it down, but I didn't. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the fact that, for once, someone wasn't asking me how I was really doing. "Caleb," he said, offering his hand. "I'm not a teacher, by the way. Just crashed this thing. I'm here for a sports rehab seminar next door. Couldn't resist the free cheese cubes." I shook his hand. "Marissa, I teach 3rd grade, and I can confirm the cheese cubes are the best part." We talked. Just small stuff at first. Work, cities, how annoying conferences were. He told me he was a physical therapist, mostly worked with teenage athletes, sprained ankles, torn ACLs, concussions. It's like herding hormonal buffalo, he joked. I laughed, and it startled me. A real laugh, the kind I hadn't felt in forever. Then he asked, "So, where's your husband? Does he let you escape to these things solo?" I froze. Not because it was rude, it wasn't, but because no one had asked me that in a long time. I took a breath. He passed. Last year. Caleb's face changed instantly. Not performative. Not pitying. Just still. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Cancer took my dad a few years ago. It doesn't get easier, just gets less sharp." That line stuck with me. Less sharp, like grief is a blade that dulls over time. I hadn't thought of it that way. I told him a little about Danny, about the factory explosion. How I came home one day to a voicemail and a casserole from a stranger. Caleb didn't interrupt. He didn't change the subject. He just listened. He didn't rush to offer solutions or say dumb things like, "Everything happens for a reason." Instead, he said, "You're carrying a lot, but you're still standing. That counts for something." That made me blink. I was so used to people either tiptoeing around me or trying to fix me. He did neither. We talked until the mixer ended and the staff started dimming the lights. He walked me to the elevator and didn't ask for my number, just said, "If I see you tomorrow, maybe we can grab coffee." I said sure, but I didn't expect to see him again. But he was there. The next morning, leaning against the breakfast table with a coffee in each hand. "Figured you'd need the good stuff," he said. "This hotel brew tastes like regret." We ended up skipping half our sessions. Walked downtown, found a hole-in-the-wall diner with chipped mugs and fresh pancakes. We talked about everything: family, teaching, how exhausting life could be sometimes. He told me his mom left when he was 10, said she needed a fresh start, and never looked back. His dad raised him solo. Caleb had taken care of him through chemo, radiation, all of it. "He fought hard," he said, staring out the window. "But sometimes it's just not enough." I reached across the table and touched his hand. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Me too." That afternoon, we parted ways without much fanfare. No promises, no plans, but when I got home, there was a message from him on LinkedIn. "Just wanted to say thanks. You reminded me that not all broken things stay broken." We started talking more after that. Texts turned into phone calls. He'd ask about my class, send me funny memes about standardized testing, tell me about some football kid who rolled his ankle trying to impress a girl. It felt light, easy. For the first time since Danny died, I didn't feel like a ghost walking around in my own life. Caleb had this gift. He knew how to make grief feel less lonely. He didn't flinch when I was quiet, didn't panic when I cried. He just held space. And slowly, I started to think maybe this was the universe giving me a second chance. But looking back now, I realize he was taking notes. Every vulnerability I gave him, he filed away. The first time I met Genevieve Carr, I was nervous enough to sweat through my blouse. She wasn't just Caleb's mother. She was a retired Ohio State judge, the kind of woman you imagine wearing pearls and holding a gavel even at brunch. Caleb kept putting off the introduction, said she was a little old school and not always easy. But I pushed. We'd been seeing each other for over 5 months, and something about not meeting his mom felt off. "She's just old," he finally said, waving it off. "Her memory's slipping. It's mostly me taking care of things now." Still, I insisted. So one Saturday afternoon, we drove out to her house, a red brick colonial on the north end of Columbus, tucked behind a row of sugar maples that looked like they'd been there longer than the street itself. "This place is massive," I said, as we pulled into the curved driveway. Caleb shrugged. She could have bought a mansion downtown, but she's stingy. Been living here since I was 5. Inside, it smelled like cedar and something faintly floral. Old perfume, maybe. The furniture was antique but well kept. The walls were lined with framed degrees, legal awards, and black and white photographs of community leaders. I expected dust and neglect, but everything was spotless. Genevieve was in the sunroom, reading a hardcover biography of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She wore dark jeans, a pressed blouse, and reading glasses that made her look even sharper. Caleb announced us with a breezy, "Hey, Ma, brought someone." She didn't look up immediately, just finished the sentence she was reading, marked the page, then glanced over her glasses. "You must be Marissa," she said, rising with a small, practiced smile. "Yes, ma'am. It's a pleasure." She offered her hand, firm and cool. Her grip surprised me. "Ma'am makes me feel like I'm back in court," she said, and for a second, her smile warmed. "Call me Genevieve." We sat, and I tried to keep things light, talked about my students, my love for children's books, how I'd always wanted to be a teacher. Genevieve asked sharp, specific questions, and it was clear within minutes that her mind was anything but slipping. She remembered case law, dates, names. At one point, she referenced a 2014 Supreme Court decision by the exact docket number. Caleb just sat there, half scrolling on his phone, half zoning out. "Caleb tells me you've been taking care of her full time," I said, trying to bridge the gap. He scoffed. "Yeah, someone has to. She forgets stuff all the time now. Can't even remember her damn garage code." Genevieve didn't respond right away, just looked at him, long and hard. "Your definition of taking care and mine don't always line up," she said. Caleb rolled his eyes and turned to me. "See? This is what I deal with." The air thickened. Genevieve shifted in her chair, spine straight as a steel rod. "I forget the garage code once. You forget rent deadlines, job interviews, and your own dental appointments." "Mom?" She raised a hand. He stopped. Then she looked at me. "Don't let the charm fool you, Marissa. Caleb's always been impulsive." Her voice was calm, but the undercurrent was sharp. Precise. Measured like a closing argument. I tried to smile, to change the subject, but the damage was done. The tension between them didn't just exist, it lived there. It had roots. After tea, I offered to help bring dishes to the kitchen. Genevieve waved me in with a small nod, and as we loaded the dishwasher, her tone changed. "You're the first one he's brought here in years," she said, not looking at me. "Oh?" She nodded. "I didn't say the first girl. I said the first one who had a job, a backbone, and a steady voice." I laughed nervously. "Well, I try." She closed the dishwasher door, leaned against the counter. "You seem decent," she said, eyes fixed on mine. "Be careful with my son." My throat caught. She didn't say it like a warning. She said it like a verdict. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, then followed Caleb out to the car. On the ride home, he asked what she said to me in the kitchen. "Nothing much," I said. He glanced at me. "She's just bitter. Always undermining me. You'll see." I wanted to ask, "See what?" But I didn't, because I was already swept up in it, in him, the long talks, the laughter, the late-night texts, the way he knew how to fill silence without making it feel like noise. I didn't want to believe that there was a darker layer under his sweetness, but that day, I saw the first crack. I saw a mother who didn't trust her son, and a son who wanted the world to think he was in control. It wasn't the proposal I imagined. Not that I had anything grand in mind. No roses, no fireworks, no flash mobs in a park, just something that felt personal, thoughtful. But Caleb popped the question over ribs at a BBQ joint off Route 3, licking sauce from his fingers as he said, "Why don't we just get married already?" I blinked. Wait, are you serious? He grinned like I'd just asked if the sky was blue. I mean, we're already doing the whole thing, right? You, me, Mom. It just makes sense. I stared at him, caught completely off guard. We hadn't even talked about rings, or timing, or where we'd live. I don't know, I said slowly. It feels fast. His voice softened. Riss, life's short. We both know that better than most. Let's stop wasting time. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a ring box. No fanfare, no kneeling, just slid it across the table. The ring wasn't flashy, thin band, small solitaire, but I could tell it wasn't cheap. Where'd you get this? I asked. He laughed. Don't worry about it, it's handled. Looking back now, I should have asked more questions. But in that moment, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could have a second shot at a real life. So I said yes. We married at the Franklin County Courthouse 2 weeks later. Just us, a board clerk, and a woman in a navy pantsuit who signed as our witness. No dress, no flowers, not even a cake. He said his mom wasn't feeling well, and it wasn't worth making a big fuss. We'll do something down the road, he promised, after things settle. They never did. We moved into Genevieve's house right after. The red brick colonial in Westerville with wide hallways and creaky floorboards. Caleb said it just made sense. There's space. She needs help, and it'll save us money while we figure things out. I hesitated at first. I liked my little apartment, the one with the quiet mornings and the reading nook I carved out of a corner. But I convinced myself it was practical, temporary. We'll stay here a year, I told myself, just until things get sorted. Caleb quit his job the week we moved in. I want to be here for Mom, he said, pouring coffee like he wasn't just dropping a bomb. She needs full-time care. But you love your work, I said. Physical therapy keeps you sane. He shook his head. She's getting worse, and I want to be the one to help. You understand, right? I wanted to. I really did. So I nodded. I make enough to cover things for now, I offered. We'll be okay. And that's how it started. The quiet bleeding of my savings, bit by bit. First it was groceries, then gas, then utilities, then a few things for the house. Nothing major. A new shower head, a Nest thermostat, a nicer microwave. He always framed it as necessity. Mom deserves comfort, he'd say. This place is old. But slowly, the numbers in my bank account started shrinking. I started noticing Amazon boxes on the porch, things I didn't order. A weighted blanket, an $80 beard trimmer, designer sneakers. Did you get these? I asked once. He waved it off. Used your card. Hope that's okay. I'll transfer you later. He never did. I didn't push, not then. Because part of me believed we were building something real, something shared. And people share, right? Genevieve didn't say much in those first few months. She kept to her study most days, reading or working on her estate files. She still had legal colleagues who dropped by sometimes, judges, attorneys, even a state rep once. She never introduced them to Caleb. I'm not in the mood for his nonsense, she said once when I asked. I didn't know what she meant. Or maybe I didn't want to know. The thing is, there wasn't one big moment that told me I'd made a mistake. It was a slow unraveling. I'd come home from school exhausted, find Caleb asleep on the couch at 3 p.m. with takeout wrappers on the coffee table. Genevieve's pill organizer untouched. The house a mess. Thought you were taking care of her, I said one evening, my voice tight. She's fine, he muttered, brushing past me. She didn't ask for anything. I checked on her myself. She was running a low-grade fever and hadn't eaten all day. That night, I made soup, sat with her in silence, and cleaned up her room while Caleb locked himself in the basement, claiming he needed space to decompress. The cracks were spreading, fast, but I kept telling myself it was just a rough patch. A new marriage, new dynamics, new stressors. It would smooth out. It didn't. One afternoon, I opened my banking app and saw a charge for $300 at a sporting goods store. Then another, $120 for premium sneakers. I confronted him. He didn't even blink. "You said we're a team, right? What's yours is mine." I stared at him. And for the first time, I wondered, what had I married into? Genevieve hadn't said much since the wedding, but she watched, always watched. And one night, as I was cleaning up the dinner dishes alone, she said, "You're doing everything now, aren't you?" I paused. "I don't mind helping." She gave me a sad smile. "That's what I used to say." I stood there, staring at the stack of plates in my hands. That house, the one Caleb insisted was a blessing, a savings, a fresh start, it wasn't a gift, it was a trap dressed like a gift. If this story touches you, drop a number 1 in the comments. Every one reminds us that these stories matter, and it gives us the motivation to keep sharing them with you. It started with little things: gas fill-ups, takeout, a random $47 charge at Target. Stuff that on their own didn't scream red flag, just normal married life expenses. Or so I told myself. At first, when I'd see unfamiliar purchases in my online banking app, I'd ask Caleb casually, "Hey, did you spend $112 at, what is this, High Street Sports?" He barely looked up from his phone. "Oh yeah, got new cleats. Thought about picking up soccer again." I blinked. "You haven't played soccer since high school." He grinned. "Gotta start somewhere." That same week, he ordered a drone. I'm not joking. A full-sized, camera-equipped, Bluetooth-synced drone. When the box arrived, I assumed it was for a friend or some school project donation. But nope. He unboxed it on the living room floor like a kid on Christmas. "Isn't this thing sick?" he said, showing me how it hovered in place. "I'm gonna use it to get shots of the neighborhood. Maybe make videos." "You're not a videographer," I said, half laughing, half shocked. "Yet," he replied with a wink. The charge, $689.47. On my debit card. I felt my chest tighten. "Caleb, you used my card for this?" He tilted his head. "Yeah, is that a problem? I figured since we're married now." The sentence hung in the air like it belonged to someone else. I swallowed hard. "It's just, we never talked about using each other's cards." He shrugged, unconcerned. "We're building a life together. It's all the same money." But it wasn't. It was my savings, my hard-earned, carefully tucked-away safety net. The same money I built after Danny died. Every dollar saved was a mile put between me and the worst year of my life. And now it was disappearing. I started keeping track. Each week, I'd print the bank statements and stash them in the kitchen drawer under the phone charger. I highlighted anything that wasn't mine. It got out of hand quickly. $89 for wireless earbuds, $230 at a designer sneaker store, $400 on golf gear even though he hadn't set foot on a course in years. One morning, I confronted him over coffee. "Caleb," I said, handing him the statement, "you spent over $1,800 in the last 2 weeks." He glanced at the paper like it was a parking ticket. "Okay. And?" "And that's not sustainable." He set the paper down, slowly, like he was preparing for battle. "You're being controlling." The word knocked the wind out of me. "Excuse me?" "You're tracking my spending like I'm your kid or something," he snapped. "We're partners, Marissa. This whole what's mine is yours thing goes both ways." "Or is that not how you see marriage?" "I see marriage as respectful," I shot back. "Not draining someone's account without even a conversation." He stood up from the table, towering over me. You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's not like I'm gambling or cheating. That last word lingered in the air a second too long. Cheating? It hadn't crossed my mind yet. Not really. But now, it hovered. I sat with it, let it settle like a bad taste in my mouth. After he stormed off, muttering something about needing space, I opened my laptop. I don't know what I was looking for. Proof of something. A reason to trust my gut, or ignore it. I started with our shared Amazon account. Caleb had set it up months ago when we moved in, but I'd never checked the order history. I clicked Your Orders, page after page, supplements, workout gear, a second set of headphones, cologne I didn't recognize, a lace dress in a size small, not my size. I opened a new tab and searched his email. It was still logged in from the last time he borrowed my computer. Most of it was junk, newsletters, spam, but one subject line stood out. Can't wait to see you again. I clicked it. Last night was amazing. You're full of surprises. Next time, tell me more about your boring teacher wife. I bet she has no idea what she's got. My chest burned. I felt like I'd been punched and couldn't quite catch my breath. He was cheating, or close enough to it, and he was using my money to fund the entire fantasy. The drone, the new clothes, the dinners I never got invited to. It was all part of a life he was building with someone else, while I made lesson plans and grocery lists and cleaned up after his mother. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there at the kitchen table with the bank statements and the emails and the dull thud of betrayal echoing inside me. When Caleb came back an hour later, acting like nothing happened, I didn't say a word. I handed him the mail, kissed his cheek, pretended, because now I was the one taking notes. I needed to know just how far he was willing to go, and I needed time. That night, after he fell asleep on the couch, remote in hand, half a beer on the coffee table, I opened his browser history, and what I found made my stomach drop. There's a kind of quiet that only lives in a house when someone is lying to you. Not the silence of peace, but the silence before a storm, when the air hangs heavy and your skin prickles for no reason you can explain. That's how it felt that afternoon. Genevieve was napping in her room. Caleb was out, supposedly at a physical therapy networking lunch. I was folding laundry in the guest room, the one we barely used. It still smelled like the cedar-lined closet and the linen spray Genevieve insisted on. She kept this room clean, just in case someone respectable came to visit. I bent down to grab the last pile of towels from the floor when I saw it. Caleb's laptop. Open. Unlocked. He must have left in a rush. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was that thread of doubt I'd been pulling at for weeks, and now it finally snapped. I sat down and moved the mouse. The screen lit up. His Facebook Messenger was still open, and at the top of the screen was a name I didn't recognize. Emily S. I clicked. The messages hit me like a slap. Emily, last night was incredible. You looked so good in that new shirt. Caleb, you bring it out of me, babe. I swear I'm not like this with her. Emily, what if she finds out? Caleb, she won't. She's too busy playing caretaker to notice anything. And honestly, I'm only with her for the money. My chest cracked open. I kept reading. Dates. Locations. Hotel bookings. Caleb had been seeing her for at least 2 months. There were photos too. One of him in a mirror, shirtless, wearing a gold chain I'd never seen before. One of her in a towel, half smiling, half smug. He'd bought her perfume, dinners, a concert ticket, all with my debit card. And worst of all, he didn't just lie. He mocked me, told her I was boring, predictable. The kind of woman who folds towels in color order. I wanted to scream, to throw his laptop out the window, to drive to whatever cheap hotel he was at and drag him out by the collar. Instead, I sat there, completely still, because beneath the rage was a deeper wound, a familiar one. Grief. The kind I thought I'd buried after Danny. But now it was back, coiled inside me, wearing a new face. Caleb's. I stared at the screen until the blue bubbles blurred. My hand trembled over the keyboard. Then I heard the front door open. His voice. Casual. Whistling. I stood up, walked downstairs like my body wasn't my own. He was in the kitchen, emptying a bag from some smoothie place. "Hey," he said, grinning. "I got you that green detox thing you like." I dropped the laptop on the counter. Open. Message thread still up. His face went pale. "What is this?" I asked, my voice flat. He blinked, swallowed, looked at the screen, then at me. "You went through my stuff?" I laughed. Sharp. Bitter. "That's your response?" He stepped back like I'd shoved him. "You invaded my privacy. You've been sleeping with someone else, in hotels, on my money, and you're worried about privacy?" He crossed his arms, deflecting like he was on trial. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" "She doesn't mean anything," he snapped. "It's just a fling. You've been distant for months, always focused on mom or school or whatever. I needed someone who saw me." I stared at him. This man. This boy in a man's clothes. "You needed someone to see you?" I whispered. "I saw you. I've always seen you. And I stayed. Through your unemployment. Through your tantrums. Through your laziness and your spending. And this is what you give back?" He scoffed. "You're twisting things." I picked up my phone, pulled up a photo of one of his messages. The one where he told Emily, "She'll never leave. She's too soft." I held it out. This is who you are, Caleb." He looked at the photo, then at me. No apology, no shame, just a shrug. "You're making this bigger than it is." That's when something inside me broke. Or maybe it woke up. I didn't cry. Not this time. The tears had dried up somewhere between the gaslighting and the insults. I just walked past him, up the stairs, and into the room Genevieve was sleeping in. She stirred when I opened the door. "Is everything all right?" she asked, voice raspy. I sat beside her, took her hand. "I think I'm finally seeing everything clearly," I said. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "I've been waiting for you to say that," she whispered. That night, I didn't pack a bag. I didn't slam a door or scream into the void. I stayed. For her. Because Genevieve deserved better than the son she raised. And I wasn't done collecting the truth. Not yet. Most people assumed Genevieve Carr was past her prime. Old, frail, quiet. They saw the gray hair, the careful steps, the way her hands trembled slightly when she poured tea, and they wrote her off. But those people didn't see what I saw when I stepped into her study. That room was her mind made visible. Legal books lined every wall. Supreme Court opinions, Ohio case law volumes, yellowed binders filled with handwritten notes from trials long closed. Awards and plaques gleamed from the shelves, including one that read, "For Distinguished Service to Justice, State of Ohio." A framed photo of her standing next to a former governor sat on her desk. She wasn't smiling, just standing tall, steady, her eyes cutting through the camera like she already knew what needed to be done. She still had that look. The study had become our shared space. Most evenings after school, I'd bring in a cup of chamomile and sit on the small couch near the fireplace while she worked. Sometimes we wouldn't talk at all, just coexist. But over time, the silence gave way to stories. She told me about her first years on the bench, about going toe-to-toe with lawyers who underestimated her, about the young public defenders she mentored, many of them women of color, who now ran their own firms. One night, while Caleb was out getting drinks with old coworkers, code for doing God knows what, I brought her a stack of mail and noticed a sealed envelope with a gold emblem on it. She sighed. Estate paperwork, she said. Keeps piling up. I swear, planning to die is more exhausting than living. I half laughed, unsure if I was allowed to. Genevieve glanced at me, then motioned to the chair across from her. Close the door, she said. I obeyed, and something in the air shifted. I need to tell you something, she began, her voice low but steady. And I need you to listen like a judge would. Not a wife, not a daughter-in-law, not a teacher. A judge. I straightened. Okay. She leaned forward, folded her hands, and looked me dead in the eyes. I don't trust my son with my estate. It wasn't a confession. It was a verdict. I didn't say anything. I let the weight of her words settle. She continued. Caleb's always believed he's owed something. Because of my name, because of the house, because I didn't leave when his father walked out. But he's never earned a dime of what I've built, and he never will. I swallowed. I know he's not always responsible. Genevieve gave a humorless smile. Responsible? Marissa, he's reckless and cruel when no one's watching. I may be old, but I'm not blind. She turned toward the desk and pulled out a file folder, thick with papers and tabs. This isn't just some inheritance, she said, tapping the folder. I've spent the last decade preparing to convert nearly $500 million in real estate assets, trust income, and personal savings into a long-term legal defense fund, one designed to build permanent, low-cost legal aid clinics across the Midwest. Places where people who can't afford justice can still get it. I blinked. That's incredible, I whispered. It's necessary, she corrected. She opened the folder and showed me a page with a breakdown. Properties, shell companies, foundations. It was intricate, deliberate, and far beyond anything I'd ever seen. But I could tell one thing immediately. This wasn't a casual idea. This was her life's mission. And you're telling me this because… Genevieve closed the folder and pushed it toward me. Because I'm adding you to the oversight board. Quietly. I've already filed the documents. I stared at her. Why me? Because you care. Because you're smart. Because you've stayed through his lies, his affairs, his manipulations. Not for him. For me. I felt tears pushing at the corners of my eyes. No one had ever acknowledged it so plainly. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Don't say anything yet. Just listen. She stood slowly and walked to the bookshelf behind her. From the top shelf, she pulled a slim lockbox and handed it to me. In here are backup copies of everything. Passwords, contacts, names of people who owe me favors and people who'd love to see this fund fail. You are not obligated to do anything. But if something happens to me, if I die before the fund is locked into place, you will be the one to finish it. I sat there in stunned silence, the box heavy in my lap. I trust you, Marissa, she said. I can't say that about many people, least of all my son. A beat passed. Then her voice softened. And I know you probably feel trapped right now, but you're not. You're the only one in this house with a future worth protecting. We sat in silence for a long time, the kind that doesn't demand filling, the kind that says, you are seen. That night, I didn't sleep, not because I was afraid, but because, for the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of something real, purposeful, bigger than my marriage, bigger than my grief, bigger than the lies Caleb had tried to wrap me in. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was a witness, and Genevieve had made me a steward of her legacy. Just before I left her room to go upstairs, she reached for my hand, her eyes sharper than ever. If I die, she said quietly, you make sure justice is done. The word caregiver used to mean something. It meant waking up early to make sure meds were taken, Meals were prepped, appointments kept. It meant noticing the little things, slight changes in breathing, in appetite, in mood, and taking action. But in our house, it had become just another role Caleb wore like a costume, one he shrugged into when other people were looking and tore off the second their backs were turned. He hadn't even bothered pretending anymore. The first time I noticed the missed pills, I was in the kitchen, looking for a pen. I opened the drawer where we kept Genevieve's pill organizer. Monday through Thursday were full, untouched. It was Friday. I walked straight to her room. She was sitting in her chair, reading a legal journal with a highlighter in hand. Her color was off, slightly gray around the mouth, her eyes a little glassy. "Did you take your meds this week?" I asked gently. She blinked, surprised. "Caleb said he gave them to me." I didn't want to alarm her. I just nodded and said, "I'll handle them from now on." She didn't argue. Just closed the journal and whispered, "Thank you." Later that day, I checked the fridge. 2 of the meal trays I'd prepared for the week were still sealed. The expiration stickers were peeling. The chicken had turned slightly gray. Caleb had been ordering delivery every night. For himself, I'd found takeout boxes in the trash, under the sink, even stuffed behind the couch cushions in the living room. That was when I called the agency. "Hi, this is Marissa Holloway. We need to rebook Mrs. Carr's caregiver. She was canceled last month, without my knowledge." The woman on the phone hesitated. "It says the cancellation came directly from the family member listed on file, Caleb Carr." "Of course." "Please reinstate the visits," I said, "as soon as possible." The next day, a woman named Tanya showed up. Mid-40s, brisk but kind. She wore scrubs and carried a clipboard. Genevieve lit up when she saw her. "Where have you been?" she said, smiling. Tanya glanced at me, then back at her. "I'm sorry, sweetie, there was a mix-up, but I'm back now." She handled everything: bathing, stretching, medication review. She even helped organize Genevieve's desk, which had grown cluttered with mail and paperwork Caleb was supposed to sort. That night, I brought it up at dinner. "I reinstated Tanya," I said as I sat across from Caleb, who was 3 bites into a cheesesteak. "She's coming 3 days a week now." He wiped his mouth and raised an eyebrow. "You went behind my back?" I stared at him. "You canceled her behind mine." "I'm managing this house," he said, gesturing broadly. "You think you're the only one doing stuff around here?" I laughed. It just came out, bitter and sharp. "Name one thing you've managed this month besides your DoorDash account." He slammed his drink down. "You're unbelievable." "No," I said, voice low. "You are." I stood and took my plate to the sink. The tension in my chest felt like a scream I'd been swallowing for weeks. I wanted to shout at him, "You live off my savings. You lie to my face. You cheat and then call it nothing. And you let your mother sit in that room alone, underfed, unmedicated, while you scroll Instagram in the basement." But I didn't, because I wasn't yelling anymore. I was watching, taking inventory, stacking receipts. One night later that week, Genevieve asked if I had a minute. I stepped into her study. She looked tired, shoulders hunched, a deeper shadow beneath her eyes. "Did you reinstate Tanya?" she asked. "I did." "Thank you." I nodded. "I didn't know he'd canceled her." She smirked faintly. "Of course he did. Caregivers notice things." She looked toward the fireplace, lost in thought. "You know, when Caleb was a kid, he told people I worked too much, that I didn't love him because I was always in court." "I'm sure he didn't mean that." She turned to me. "Oh, he meant it." And he never stopped believing it. I didn't know what to say. Then she winced. It was quick, a flicker of pain that crossed her face before she masked it. "What's wrong?" I asked, stepping closer. "Nothing," she said, brushing me off. "Just a little lightheaded." "Have you eaten today?" She hesitated. "I don't remember." I helped her to the couch, grabbed her a protein shake, and called Tanya to come early the next morning. Then I texted Caleb. Me. Genevieve isn't feeling well. You home? Caleb. Out. Drinks, well out, Evan. No further response. No checking in. No, is she okay? Nothing. I sat with Genevieve until she fell asleep, watched her breathing, counted the seconds between each inhale, and I realized something in that moment. He didn't just want the house or the money. He wanted to outlive her. In every way. He was waiting, and I was done pretending not to see it. The hospital room was quiet, too quiet. Machines blinked in soft rhythm. A TV hung in the corner playing muted late-night news, but Genevieve had no interest in it. She was sitting up, propped on pillows, her eyes as alert as ever, though her body had clearly taken a hit. She'd fainted earlier that afternoon. Tanya and I rushed her here. Blood sugar was low, but there were other concerns. The doctors were running more tests, mumbling things like progression and monitor closely. Caleb hadn't even shown up. He texted one word when I told him. Noted. I stayed the night. Around midnight, when the halls emptied out and the shift nurses spoke in whispers, Genevieve turned to me. I can't wait anymore, she said. Her voice was thin but firm. There's something I need you to see. She reached for her purse on the tray table and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. Her hands shook slightly as she passed it to me. I took it carefully. What is it? I asked, even though I already knew it wasn't just paperwork. She gestured to the tiny light above the bed. Read it. I opened the envelope and slid out a sheaf of legal documents. The header read, Carr Legacy Trust, Execution and Succession. It was her will, or rather, the real version, not the one Caleb believed existed, the one where he was the golden child inheriting the Carr empire. This was something entirely different. Everything's been transferred into a trust, she said, a protected structure, irrevocable, untouchable by outside claimants, including Caleb. I scanned the pages, highlighting names I recognized, property deeds, accounts, business interests. But the most shocking part was halfway through. Beneficiary, Caleb Carr, to receive $1 with provision for full disbursement only upon verifiable proof of 1 full year of continuous employment. I looked up. $1? I whispered. Genevieve's lips twitched. He always did say he deserved something. But what if he contests this? What if he finds a way to fake it? That's where you come in, she said, tapping the next section of the document with a brittle finger. I looked down. Executor of Trust, Marissa Holloway. I froze. You made me... Executor? I did. 6 weeks ago. Why me? She looked at me, hard. Because I trust your spine more than I trust his smile. I felt my throat tighten. My hands started to sweat. Genevieve, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not... You're not corruptible, she interrupted. You see what's happening in this house. You've stayed not out of weakness, but principle. You've protected me when my own son used me like a meal ticket. That's who I need holding this line. I sat back, the folder resting on my lap like it weighed 100 pounds. He's going to lose his mind, I said quietly. She nodded. He'll threaten. He'll manipulate. He'll try everything, but he'll have nothing, unless he earns it. And if I say no, if I walk away from this, she didn't blink. Then the trust dissolves. The assets revert to the estate. He inherits it all. I swallowed. So if I don't follow the plan, Caleb gets everything. We sat in silence for a long time. I looked down at the documents again, at my name, printed in bold, my signature line waiting. This wasn't just about money. It was about legacy, about justice, about the final decision of a woman who'd been sharp enough to know her son and brave enough to name her truth. "I'll do it," I said softly. Genevieve nodded once, then leaned back into her pillow. Her eyes drifted toward the ceiling. "I wish I'd had a daughter," she murmured. "You do," I said. Neither of us cried. But something passed between us in that moment, something heavier than grief and bigger than blood. I stayed with her until she drifted off to sleep. And when the hallway lights dimmed and the nurses disappeared behind closed doors, I took the pen from my purse and signed the executor line. Ciake. It was the kind of morning that felt wrong from the start. Gray sky, thick air, quiet in the kind of way that feels like the world is holding its breath. I walked into Genevieve's room just after 6. Tanya had called off last minute with a sick child, and I wanted to check on her before I left for school. I carried a warm towel and her favorite morning tea, ginger and lemon, 2 sugar cubes, not 1. She was still, too still. I said her name softly. "Genevieve?" Nothing. I stepped closer, set the tea down on her bedside table. My fingers grazed her wrist. No pulse. Her skin was cool. I froze, just for a second. Then my body kicked into motion. I checked again, both wrists. Her chest. Nothing. No rise, no breath. She was gone. Peaceful. Composed. Her hands folded gently over her chest, her face serene, like she knew. I sat beside her for what felt like hours. I didn't cry, not right away. There was too much weight in the room. Too much knowing. We both had felt it coming. She'd prepared me. She trusted me. Now it was real. I stood, walked out of her room, and went downstairs. Caleb was asleep on the couch, mouth open, TV still glowing from the night before. A half-finished beer sat on the coffee table. The room smelled like old takeout and his cologne. I stared at him. He'd been snoring while his mother took her last breath in the room down the hall. I didn't wake him. I called the nurse. Then the lawyer. Then Tanya. Then, and only then, I sat on the back porch with Genevieve's tea, now cold, and watched the sky finally break into a drizzle. The funeral was simple, just how she wanted it. No grand speeches, no frills. A few close friends from her law days showed up. Former colleagues, a retired judge, 2 paralegals who cried softly in the back row. Caleb showed up 20 minutes late, in a black button-down that still had the tags on it. He hadn't shaved. Wore sunglasses the entire time, though the sun never came out. He clapped me on the shoulder during the procession like we were at a work barbecue. "Tough day, huh?" he said, without a trace of sadness. I nodded, jaw clenched. Afterward, while people were still mingling, he stepped outside and pulled a cigar from his jacket pocket. Lit it. Took a deep drag like it was his graduation day. I stepped outside too, mostly to breathe, and overheard him laughing with one of his old high school buddies. "I'm about to be rich," he said, cocky. "She left the whole damn estate to me. Can you believe it?" The friend whistled. "How much are we talking?" Caleb leaned in with a smirk. "500 million. B. As in, bought my freedom." I turned, walked away before I could throw something. Let him celebrate. Let him believe he'd won, because he had no idea. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the will in front of me, my name printed on the legal documents. My signature scrawled in permanent ink beside Genevieve's. I called the attorney, Mr. Denton, calm, composed man, been in Genevieve's circle for decades. It's time, I said. Let's move everything into motion. He confirmed it. The trust would now be fully executed. All Caleb's access revoked. Every property, every account, every fund frozen until proof of employment for 1 full calendar year was produced. And I held the reins, all of them. I hung up and let the silence wash over me. That was when the front door opened. Caleb strolled in, swinging his keys, still smelling like smoke and ego. "Did you eat?" I asked, not looking up. "Funeral food's never good," he muttered, setting his phone down. "Listen, we need to talk." I turned to face him. He didn't sit, just reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Dropped it on the table between us. I already knew what it was. "Divorce papers," he said, too brightly. "Figured now's as good a time as any." My hand hovered above the envelope. I looked him in the eye. "You're really doing this now?" He shrugged. "Look, you're a sweet woman, but this thing, we were just playing house until the real money came through. Don't take it personally." I blinked. "Playing house?" "You're the placeholder, Marissa. That's not an insult, just a fact." I didn't respond. I didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't scream. I just picked up the envelope, slid it into the drawer, and smiled, because Caleb had just thrown away the only person who could have helped him navigate what was coming. I stood. He looked confused. "You're not going to say anything?" "I'll get back to you," I said quietly. "I have a few things to take care of first." That night, I stood in Genevieve's study with the light off, just her portrait on the desk illuminated by the hallway glow. She'd trusted me to hold the line, and I would. He thought he'd buried her and inherited the empire, but he didn't know. The will was written to break him. The thing about betrayal is, when it finally finishes cutting, it leaves you oddly calm. I didn't cry the night he handed me the divorce papers. I didn't scream, didn't ask why. I just watched Caleb with this eerie clarity, like I was seeing the final version of a man who'd been pretending to be someone else for years. And he thought he'd won. He strutted around the house like a man already shopping yachts, tossing his keys on the granite counter like they meant something. He'd even booked a consultation with a financial planner the day after the funeral. I made coffee the next morning like it was just another Tuesday. Poured 2 mugs. Set one in front of him. "Is this a peace offering?" he asked, smirking. "No," I said. "It's a goodbye gift." He tilted his head. "You're taking this really well." I smiled. "You always said I was mature." I didn't mention the trust, or the $1 inheritance, or the fact that Mr. Denton had just finished filing the final documents, sealing Genevieve's estate from his reach. Let him sip his coffee and feel powerful. He'd feel something very different soon. Later that afternoon, I sat across from him in the same living room where he'd thrown the papers at me 2 nights earlier. The envelope was open now. I'd read every line, every clause. He'd had his attorney draft it to look clean and airtight. No alimony, no assets. Just a smooth little push out the door. Caleb lounged back on the couch, arms spread wide like he was holding court. "You sure you don't want to fight it?" he asked. "Not even gonna ask for the house?" "I don't want the house," I said. He snorted. "Didn't think so." I picked up the pen and signed. 1 stroke at a time. My name in black ink, bold and steady. When I was done, I capped the pen, slid the pages back into the envelope, and handed it to him. "Good luck, Caleb." He raised his eyebrows. "That's it?" "That's it." I stood, walked upstairs, packed 1 suitcase, a small one. I didn't need much. Just my laptop, some clothes, and the folder of documents Genevieve had left me. The real will, the trust files, and every receipt I'd been collecting for the last 6 months. The record of Caleb withdrawing from our joint account. The debit card charges to luxury stores. The canceled caregiver contracts. The hidden camera footage of him screaming at his mother when he thought no one was home. I'd gathered it quietly, patiently, like a teacher watching a child cheat on a test, waiting, not to punish, but to document. As I came down the stairs, he was standing by the door, keys in hand, as if he was seeing me off. "Don't forget your toothbrush," he said with a wink. I stepped past him, turned. "Oh, and Caleb?" "Yeah?" I smiled. "You should check your trust access. Make sure your inheritance posted." He frowned. "What?" "Just a friendly tip." And then I walked out. I didn't go to a friend's place. I didn't go to a hotel. I went to Genevieve's townhouse. She'd kept it a secret, even from Caleb. It was in her maiden name, nestled just outside downtown. A warm little 2-story with ivy on the walls and a kitchen that smelled like lemon oil and old cookbooks. The keys had been in the trust folder. And the deed? Signed to me. The letter she'd written was short. "For the daughter I never had. Make it a place where good things grow." I stood in that quiet, sunlit kitchen and exhaled for the first time in months. Free. Not just from him, but from the version of myself that tolerated him. A few days later, the voicemails started. "Hey babe, weird thing. Can't access anything. The lawyer must have messed something up." Then, "Why is the bank saying I'm not listed on the account?" I thought, "Did you change something?" Then, "Marissa, what the hell did you do?" I didn't answer. He sent a text. "We need to talk. This isn't funny." I replied with a single line. "Check the will, carefully." I could picture him reading it, finding the clause that left him a single dollar. The employment stipulation. My name as executor. I imagined the moment it all sank in. He didn't just lose me. He lost everything. Because he underestimated the wrong woman. He thought I'd fall apart. Instead, I walked out with the truth, while he stayed behind, wrapped in his own lie. Kai. It was a Tuesday when the cracks finally started to show. According to the bank manager I spoke with later, Caleb walked into the branch like a man who owned the building. He was wearing that ridiculous blazer he only pulled out for big moments, navy blue, slightly too tight in the shoulders, like he'd gained a little weight from all the takeout. Apparently, he greeted the receptionist with a wink and said, "I'm here to finalize a few things with my inheritance. Shouldn't take long." It took long. Because the moment he sat down with the private wealth manager and handed over the folder with Genevieve's death certificate and what he thought was his claim to the trust, everything stalled. I wasn't there, but I can picture it so clearly. The slow blink from the banker, the tapping of keys, the quiet confusion turning into awkward discomfort. "Mr. Carr, I'm not sure where the misunderstanding happened, but you're not listed as a primary beneficiary." "I'm her son," he probably snapped. "Yes, but according to the trust document, your disbursement is conditional." The word he hates more than anything. Conditional. The banker would have carefully slid the paperwork back across the desk, explained that the trust was locked, that all access had been placed under the authority of a legally designated executor. And that executor was me. I was folding laundry in the townhouse when he called, didn't even say hello. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "The bank says I can't touch the account." I picked up a shirt, calmly smoothed it over my knee. "That's correct." "What do you mean that's correct?" I let the silence stretch just long enough for it to burn. "The estate was placed into a trust," I said. "Mom did that to protect it from impulsive behavior." He scoffed. "From me? That's a joke. She told me everything was mine." "No," I said. "She told you what you wanted to hear." He went quiet. just for a second. I could almost hear his mind spinning, trying to find a loophole. The banker said I'm entitled to something. They saw my name. You are, I said. $1. What? Plus the opportunity to earn the rest, I continued. If, and only if, you maintain verified employment for 12 consecutive months. You can't be serious. I folded another shirt. There's a clause that allows me to oversee the verification, tax forms, pay stubs, written evaluations. I'll need all of that if you want access. His voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. You did this. She did this, I said. I'm just following instructions. You're punishing me. No, I said, my voice sharp now. You punished yourself the moment you started stealing from me, lying to her, and cheating like it was a sport. Actions have consequences, Caleb. This is yours. You're nothing but a... He started, but I cut him off. Careful, I said. You might need my signature one day. Silence. Then, his voice cracked. Not angry this time. Desperate. Marissa, come on. This doesn't have to be like this. I need that money. I'm already behind on stuff. I told some people I'd be investing. My credit cards are... I walked to the window. Outside, the fall leaves had started turning. Reds and golds and that brilliant kind of orange that only lasts a few days before fading. Then maybe it's time you got a job, I said. A real one, like the rest of us. He breathed heavily into the phone. That weird, wheezing inhale he does when he's about to cry but wants to seem tough. I'll do anything, he said, quieter now. Marissa, please. That's when it hit me. He'd never begged before. Not when Genevieve was sick. Not when I caught him cheating. Not even when I confronted him about draining my bank account. But now, when the money was gone, he begged, and I hung up. I sat down on the edge of my new bed in my new house, my house, and stared at the silent phone. I expected to feel guilt, but I didn't. I felt something closer to release, like I'd been holding my breath for 2 years and someone had finally let me exhale. That night, I poured a glass of wine, sat on the back porch, and thought about how long I'd spent trying to hold everything together. My marriage, my finances, my sanity, and for what? So a man-child could treat me like a safety net while he aimed for a trampoline? Not anymore. He couldn't touch the trust. He couldn't touch me. He couldn't touch anything he hadn't earned. And for the first time in a long time, I slept like a woman with nothing to lose and everything to protect. You'd think Caleb would have gone into hiding after the bank visit. But no. Men like him don't disappear when they're exposed. They double down. They perform. And when the performance fails, they scramble for a new audience. Which brings us to a tiny cafe off High Street, tucked between a record store and a nail salon. One of those cozy hipster spots with Edison bulbs, handwritten chalk menus, and oat milk everything. It's where she worked. Emily, his side piece, the one he bought perfume and concert tickets for, using my card. She'd been waiting for him at the back booth, probably expecting a pitch. Something about plans and investments and our future. Caleb always talked in dreamy circles when he was trying to distract from the fact that he had nothing. He arrived 15 minutes late, no flowers, no apology, just a stressed-out smile and a wrinkled polo shirt. He tried to order a lavender latte, but his debit card declined. Twice. By the time he sat down across from her, the waitress had already given him that pitying look, the kind you reserve for broke guys with expensive shoes. And Emily? She was already suspicious. He launched into his usual script. Crazy week. The bank made a mistake. Lawyers are fixing it. Just a matter of time before the funds clear. But she wasn't buying it. Not this time. I know because one of Tanya's friends happened to be working the counter that morning and texted me in real time. Girl, I think Caleb's getting dumped at Rome Cafe RN. I didn't respond, but I waited for the next update. 5 minutes later. Yep. She walked out. Didn't even look back. Left him with the bill he couldn't pay. Oof. I could almost hear his face cracking behind that smug exterior. The mask was off, and reality was catching up. After Emily ditched him, Caleb started dialing everyone in his contacts like it was a fire sale. Old college buddies, ex-coworkers, some cousin in Texas, even that guy he once sued over a motorcycle accident. He asked for loans, favors, short-term liquidity, framed it like an opportunity. Temporary cash flow issue, he said. No one answered. Or worse, some answered and hung up. One friend texted him, "You blew up your life for nothing. Don't drag me into it." Another just replied, "Karma." And then, when every door closed, he turned back to me. It was a Thursday. Parent-teacher conferences. I'd just wrapped up a meeting with one of my fifth graders' moms when the front desk buzzed my classroom phone. Marissa? There's a man here asking for you?" Says it's urgent. I knew before she even said his name. I walked out into the hallway, and there he was, Caleb, standing like a storm cloud in a too-thin jacket, eyes rimmed red, face gaunt. He looked smaller, like the money had been inflating him this whole time and someone finally popped the balloon. "Marissa," he said, voice low. "Please, just hear me out." I crossed my arms. "This is my workplace," I said. "You can't be here." "I don't know what else to do," he said, eyes darting around. "I've got nothing left. I can't access anything. Rent's due. My car might get repossessed. You're the only person I have." I didn't speak. Because what do you say to someone who set fire to your home and then asked to borrow a blanket? He stepped closer. "You don't even have to give me money. Just say something to the lawyer. Tell him I'm working on it, that I'll figure it out. Please. I'm drowning here." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who mocked me. Who stole from me. Who kissed another woman and called me a placeholder. Now begging in a school hallway, hoping I'd save him from himself. "I'm not your lifeboat," I said, voice sharp but steady. He blinked, stunned, like he expected me to melt at his brokenness. "You're not gonna help me?" I shook my head. "You had help. You had everything. You burned it." He opened his mouth to argue, but I raised a hand. "If you don't leave, I'll have school security escort you out. Don't come here again." And I turned, walked back into my classroom, closed the door behind me. Through the small window, I watched him stand there for a moment, lost, humiliated, before finally walking away. That was the last time I saw him in person. He'd spent his whole life using people like ladders, but now, there was no one left to climb on. I was halfway through grading math quizzes when the secretary called again. "Marissa," she said softly, like she didn't want to startle me. "He's back." I didn't need a name. I knew. I looked out the window. The sun was setting across the teacher parking lot, casting long shadows over the concrete. And there he was, Caleb, leaning against my car like he owned it. This time, he didn't look desperate. He looked rehearsed, clean-shaven, collared shirt, fake smile. But I saw it. The crack behind his eyes. The panic under the surface. That same wounded pride men wear when they've realized the world doesn't revolve around them. I walked out slowly. No rush, no fear. Just the steady click of my shoes on pavement. He smiled like nothing was broken. "Hey, babe," he said casually, as if we were still married, still pretending. "Don't call me that." His smile faltered. "Okay, fine. Look, I shouldn't have come to the classroom the other day. That was out of line." I didn't respond. But I thought, maybe if we could just talk, away from the lawyers, just you and me. I crossed my arms. There's nothing left to talk about. He took a step closer. I know you're still mad. I get it. But Marissa, you know me. You know I'm not a bad guy. I tilted my head. You're not a bad guy? Caleb, you lied to me. You drained my account. You used me to keep your life afloat while you were sleeping with someone else. You tossed me aside the second you thought you'd won the jackpot. And now that it's gone, you're crawling back? He tried to smile again. You're being dramatic. You stole from me, I said, louder this time. You manipulated me. You watched your mother die while you were out buying cigars and planning your new life with someone else. You made your choices. Now live with them. His face twitched. I lost everything. That's not my fault. You could help. I did help, I snapped. I stood by you. I took care of her. I kept that house running while you played pretend. And then you threw me away. So no, Caleb, I don't owe you anything. He stared at me, breathing hard now. You're cold. You've changed. Good, I said. That means I'm finally safe. At that point, the assistant principal had already called security. Mr. Rickman, our school's retired Marine-turned-campus monitor, stepped into view. You all right, Ms. Holloway? He asked, eyes on Caleb. I'm fine. He was just leaving. Caleb glanced between us. You really calling the muscle on me? You're trespassing, I said. You showed up where I work. You crossed a line. He held up his hands. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just wanted a conversation. Rickman stepped forward. Sir, we don't allow unauthorized guests on school grounds. I'm going to need you to walk to your car and leave quietly. Caleb looked like he might argue, but then he saw something. Maybe the calm in my face, maybe the lack of sympathy in Rickman's. And for the first time in a long time, he understood he wasn't the main character anymore. He backed off. I'll go, he muttered. But this, you're gonna regret it. I raised an eyebrow. The only thing I regret is not seeing through you sooner. He opened his car door, paused. I loved you, he said. No, I corrected. You loved what I could do for you. And then I turned and walked back inside. I didn't look back. That was the last time I saw Caleb in person. He didn't text again, didn't email, didn't send another voicemail with fake apologies or long-winded excuses, because he knew. He'd tried everything, flattery, guilt, fear, charm, and none of it worked, because I wasn't that woman anymore. He didn't know what to do with someone who couldn't be manipulated, and deep down, I think he was ashamed. Not just of what he'd done, but of how little he had left without someone else to carry him. I sat in my classroom that night long after the sun went down, watching the orange glow fade to navy behind the playground. There was still a quiz stack on my desk, but I wasn't thinking about numbers anymore. I was thinking about peace, about how long I'd craved it without even knowing what it felt like. No buzzing drama, no fear of the next emotional explosion. No man in my life siphoning my energy to prop up his ego. Just silence. And for the first time in years, it felt safe. The will reading was quiet. No drama, no theatrics. Just 4 people in a beige conference room and the slow unfolding of everything Genevieve had built and protected from the one person who thought he owned it. Mr. Denton, her lawyer, wore a charcoal suit and read every word like it was scripture. He didn't rush. He didn't soften. He delivered each sentence with legal finality, the kind that doesn't care about anyone's feelings. Caleb wasn't there. He'd been notified. Chose not to come. Maybe he couldn't face it. Maybe he thought ignoring it would change the outcome. Either way, he missed the moment I was officially named executor of the car trust. I signed the paperwork with steady hands, no shaking, no second guessing. It felt like closing a circle I didn't even know I'd stepped into years ago, back when I walked into that house thinking I was just a wife and not someone about to become the steward of a $500 million legacy. She trusted you, Mr. Denton said, sliding the final page across the table. more than anyone. I trusted her too, I said softly, and I meant it. Genevieve wasn't just Caleb's mother or a retired judge or a woman with generational wealth. She was the first person in a long time who looked at me, really looked, and saw more than my grief or my usefulness. She saw my backbone. She saw someone worth investing in. Over the next few weeks, I got to work. We launched the CAR initiative, just like she'd dreamed. A nonprofit dedicated to funding community legal aid clinics across Ohio, with plans to expand nationwide. I met with city council members, nonprofit directors, retired attorneys, and housing advocates. People who had spent their lives trying to help others, often with no resources and very little support. Now they had a partner. And every time I saw a mother walk into one of those clinics with her child in tow, or a tenant finally speak to a lawyer about the landlord who'd ignored their black mold complaints, I felt it. Purpose. Not just revenge. Not just survival, but real, lasting impact. The kind that lives longer than any marriage or bank account. And then there was the townhouse. Genevieve's quiet sanctuary tucked between brick buildings downtown. I moved in 2 weeks after the will was finalized. No fanfare, no announcement, just me, a few boxes, and the air of a home that had always been waiting. She'd left everything behind: furniture, books, her framed law degree. A dusty piano in the corner with a single note taped above it. Play badly, loudly. I cried the first night I slept there. Not because I missed her, although I did, but because it had been years since I felt safe somewhere that wasn't just a temporary fix. Years since I'd looked around a space and thought, this is mine. Not borrowed, not conditional, not shared with someone who would turn it into a weapon. Mine. I still taught, of course. People asked why I didn't quit. With all that money, all that power. But teaching wasn't a job I took for income. It was my anchor, my heartbeat. Every time one of my students solved a tough word problem or ran up to show me a sticker from their dentist visit, it reminded me why I fought so hard to protect my life from men like Caleb, because kids deserve teachers who aren't exhausted by emotional warfare at home. Because I deserved to build something better. And here's the thing people don't tell you about winning. Sometimes it doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like a deep exhale. A morning coffee that tastes like closure. A room that's quiet for all the right reasons. I'd spent so long in fight or flight that peace felt unfamiliar. But I was learning. Slowly. Learning that it's okay to trust yourself again. To make choices from love instead of fear. To sleep with both eyes closed. Of course, not everything was done. There was still one thing left. One thread I hadn't pulled. One envelope still waiting. Not for me, but for him. A letter Genevieve had written, sealed in a stamped envelope, marked with his name in sharp black ink. I hadn't sent it yet, not because I wasn't ready, but because I wanted the timing to be perfect. I wanted him to feel every part of the fall, to sit in the wreckage of what he thought he deserved, before the final truth landed in his lap like a silent hammer. Not revenge, justice. And maybe, if he had a soul left under the showmanship and manipulation, maybe it would change him. But I wasn't counting on that. Some people don't change. They just crash. I stood at the post office counter holding an envelope that weighed no more than a few ounces. Still, it felt heavier than any package I'd ever mailed. It was addressed to Caleb Carr, scribbled in my handwriting, black ink across a stark white envelope. No return address, no note of sympathy. Just one last delivery, from a mother who saw through her son and a woman who had finally stopped protecting him. Inside that envelope were two things: a crisp $1 bill and a letter sealed in Genevieve's careful handwriting, written months before her death. I'd held on to it for weeks. But today felt like the right day. It was raining. Quiet. The kind of gray drizzle that muffles everything and slows the world down. The clerk at the counter didn't ask questions, just weighed it, printed the label, and dropped it into the bin behind her. "That's it?" I asked. She nodded. "It's on its way." Funny how simple it was, to send a goodbye with postage. Genevieve had written the letter on one of her good legal pads. I remembered the exact day. She was in her study, sunlight spilling across the bookshelves, her hand moving steadily across the paper like she was writing a final verdict. "Do you want me to type it?" I'd offered. She shook her head. "No, this needs to be personal. He won't hear it otherwise." She sealed it herself, taped a dollar bill inside with a neat piece of Scotch tape, as if it were a check inside a birthday card. She handed it to me and said, "Send it when the timing hurts." At the time, I didn't know what that meant, but now, I did. 3 days earlier, a friend of Caleb's had posted a photo on Facebook. A blurry shot of him standing in a grocery store parking lot, holding a plastic bag and wearing a rain jacket 2 sizes too big. The caption, "Damn, life really humbled, bro." He looked hollow, eyes sunken, beard patchy, body language slumped like he'd been carrying disappointment like luggage. From what I'd heard, he was working part-time as a delivery driver for a local food app. Living in a basement unit of someone's cousin's house. No car of his own anymore. No money. No Emily. No friends answering his calls. And now, no illusions left. Which made it the perfect moment for the letter. The full text. I read it once before mailing, as Genevieve had asked me to. "Caleb, you were born with more privilege than most people see in a lifetime. You had education, support, family, and more chances than you ever earned. And still, you squandered every one of them chasing shortcuts. This trust was built to serve something greater than you, to correct the kind of injustice I saw every day in court. You want your inheritance? Earn it. Show up every day for a full year. Work a real job, pay your bills, take care of yourself without bleeding someone else dry. Then, and only then, the doors might open. Until then, here's what you've earned, $1. Just enough for you to start learning what things really cost." Mom. No signature flourish. No warmth. Just facts. Just the truth. I don't know exactly when the letter arrived, but I imagine the scene like this. Caleb opens his mailbox and finds the envelope. Recognizes my handwriting. Hesitates, expecting a plea or maybe a lifeline. Instead, he pulls out $1 and a letter from the only person who ever gave him unconditional love, and reads that her love finally had terms. I imagine the flush rising in his neck, the tight grip of humiliation, and maybe, for the first time, a glimpse of clarity. Or maybe not. Maybe he tore it up and cursed the sky. Maybe he framed the dollar out of spite. Maybe he crumpled it and left it on the floor of whatever temporary room he sleeps in now. All I know for sure is this. He never replied. Not a call, not a text, not even a middle-of-the-night voicemail full of slurred guilt and scrambled excuses. And that silence? It was louder than any apology could have been. It meant he knew. That the door was closed, that no one was coming to save him, that he'd played the game and lost, not because I beat him, because he bet everything on a lie, and the house always wins. That $1, I didn't miss it, but I hope he felt it, hope he stared at it and thought about all the real currency he burned, trust, love, safety, legacy, and I hope, in the quiet of whatever life he's patched together, that letter sits in a drawer somewhere, a reminder of the day his mother told him the truth, and the woman he discarded mailed it to his doorstep. Betrayal. The scissors felt heavier than I expected. I stood on a small wooden platform, red ribbons stretched in front of me, a crowd of about 30 people clapping and smiling under the fall sun. It was the grand opening of the first car legal aid center, and I was standing there as if this had always been the plan. But it hadn't been. Not even close. 4 years ago, I was a grieving widow in a tiny apartment, unsure how to pay rent and show up to teach spelling every day without crying. And yet, here I was, holding those ceremonial gold scissors, smiling through the blur of tears. Not sadness, something else. Pride, healing, completion. Genevieve would have hated the fuss. She didn't like speeches or ribbons or people calling her a philanthropist. She liked impact. And this clinic, tucked between a food bank and a senior center, was already making it. Even before the official opening, we'd hired 2 lawyers, 1 housing specialist, and a former social worker who knew how to navigate child custody nightmares better than anyone I'd ever met. They were already fielding calls before the furniture was unpacked, which felt right. Genevieve always moved faster than bureaucracy. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. I told them about the woman who inspired the mission, the retired judge who never stopped fighting for people who couldn't afford the fight. She believed justice shouldn't be reserved for the wealthy, I said. And she didn't just believe it. She put her money, all of it, where her values were. People clapped. But I wasn't done. I met her because I married her son, I said, my voice steady. And I stayed in her life because she saw me, not as a daughter-in-law, not as a placeholder, but as someone who could carry something forward. That part hit. I saw eyes wet in the crowd. Not from pity, from recognition. Because so many of us, women especially, spend years feeling used, erased, undervalued, until someone finally says, "I see what you are." And it matters. Genevieve was that person for me. After the ceremony, while volunteers handed out cookies and coffee, a woman approached me. Early 20s, cardigan over a law school hoodie, eyes sharp and tired like she was running on caffeine and borrowed courage. "You don't know me," she said, "but I'm starting my 2nd year at Franklin Law. I interned at a courthouse last summer. Saw what your foundation is doing." I smiled. "You're the future of this place." She shook her head. "I'm not sure I belong in law. I don't come from that world, and I've never seen anyone like me at the top." "You just did," I said. Her face softened. Then she asked the one thing that caught me off guard. "Would you mentor me?" And for a split second, I saw myself. Not as I was now, in a blazer and heels with a ribbon behind me, but as the version of myself that had no clue what she was capable of. And I said, "Yes, absolutely yes." That night, back at the townhouse, I sat on Genevieve's old couch, now mine, with a mug of tea and my laptop open, skimming emails from donors and press. And I thought about all the stories we never get to tell. The ones about women who change lives not with loud gestures, but with quiet trust, who make space for others, not because they need credit, but because they believe in legacy over ego. Genevieve wasn't perfect. She had blind spots and regrets, but she owned them. She grew, and she passed on something far more valuable than money. A mission, a map, a story I could keep writing. And I wasn't writing it alone anymore. I had a team. A network, a movement. That's what she left behind. Not just wealth, but momentum. I was shutting off the lights when I heard the thud at the front door. A small package, no return address. Brown paper, sealed neatly. At first, I thought it might be from the clinic. We'd been receiving a lot of local support. Binders, clipboards, donations. But when I picked it up, I knew this was different. It was heavy, personal, and when I saw the handwriting on the label, my stomach tightened. It wasn't hers. It was his. Caleb. I didn't open it right away. I just stood in the entryway, heart beating louder than the rain outside, staring at a box from a ghost I thought I'd never hear from again. After all this time, he was quiet. After all the letters I didn't send, the calls I didn't return, the boundaries I never crossed. Why now? I set the package down on the dining table, next to a vase of flowers from the clinic opening. The house was silent, peaceful. But that package? It was a ripple, a warning, or maybe the final page. The box sat on my kitchen counter for hours before I opened it. I kept walking past it, sweeping, wiping down the stove, sorting mail like it wasn't there. But every time I glanced in its direction, the same thought crept in. What does a man like Caleb send when he has nothing left? Not threats, not demands, not charm. Just a name scribbled in shaky handwriting, no return address, no message on the outside. Eventually, I cut the tape with a paring knife and peeled the lid back. Inside was a bundle of worn envelopes, each rubber banded together and labeled in his handwriting. Rent, back taxes, legal fines, storage fees. And at the bottom, sealed in a simple white envelope, was a check for $35,000. No memo, no bank logo, just a handwritten note tucked inside. This is all that's left. I don't deserve it. Maybe you'll do something real with it. Caleb. I stared at the check. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. Just stillness. Like watching the final scene of a long, painful movie. $35,000. That's what remained after all the lies, the theft, the grand fantasies of being a multimillionaire and discarding the woman who helped him get there. This money? It wasn't his victory. It was the wreckage. My first instinct wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't even anger. It was pity. Because somewhere, deep in that letter, I heard something I never expected from Caleb. An admission. Not the kind you say out loud in court. Not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that quietly whispers, I know what I did, and it didn't get me anywhere. I folded the note and set it aside. And then I looked again at the check. $35,000 could change someone's life. It could buy months of groceries for struggling families. It could keep the lights on at a legal clinic for weeks. It could help someone who deserved more than what Caleb ever offered the world. And yet, I didn't touch it. Not that night. Not the next day. I let it sit there as a symbol of everything he'd tried to build on sand and everything that crumbled underneath him. 2 days later, I walked into the car legal aid clinic with the check sealed in a new envelope. No drama, no announcement. I handed it to our finance coordinator and said, "Anonymous donation." She smiled, didn't ask a thing. That's how I deposited it, untouched. Not because I forgave him, but because it didn't belong to me anymore. It never really had. Later that evening, I logged into an old account I hadn't checked in months, one of those throwaway Facebook profiles I used when I needed to distance myself from the noise. And there he was, Caleb. His profile was almost empty. New username, blurry profile photo taken from the driver's seat of what looked like a beat-up sedan. His job title read, Delivery Associate, part-time, no girlfriend, no vacations, no shirtless gym pics, just a man starting over in silence. It would have been easy to feel smug, to think, that's what you get. But I didn't, because what he got was himself, and I was free. You know, people think closure comes with revenge, that you need fireworks or screaming matches or a courtroom takedown, but sometimes closure is a quiet package on your doorstep. It's a note from someone who used to control your emotions, finally admitting they never had real power. It's knowing that while he's counting dollars, you're building legacies. I still had the letter from Genevieve tucked away in my desk drawer, the one she left for me, the real one. Not about Caleb, not about the trust. Just 2 sentences, scrawled in her script on a yellow notepad. You were the only one who listened. Now make sure others are heard. I've read it dozens of times, and that night, after depositing Caleb's check and locking the office behind me, I read it again. Then I turned out the lights. And walked into my future with nothing left dragging behind me. The sun was just dipping behind the trees when I stepped onto the balcony of my new home. Genevieve's old townhouse, now mine. The air was cooler than usual for early fall in Ohio, crisp and quiet, like the world had finally exhaled with me. I cradled a mug of tea in both hands, leaned on the railing, and watched the porch light flicker on, not because I needed it, but because I always kept it on now, a symbol, a promise, a quiet beacon, not for anyone else, for me, to remind myself I made it out, that even after the kind of betrayal that nearly broke me, I still had the power to create warmth, and to never let anyone dim it again. There was a time, not too long ago, when I believed love meant endurance, that if you loved someone hard enough, long enough, you could fix their wounds, even if they were the ones cutting you. I thought trust was something you gave like a gift, wrapped in silence, sealed with hope. But now I know the truth. Trust is earned, not assumed. Silence is not grace, and love without respect is just performance. Looking back, I don't regret marrying Caleb, not because he was worthy, he wasn't, but because loving and surviving him taught me what real strength looks like. It's not the kind of strength that shouts in courtrooms or throws punches. It's the quiet kind. The strength to walk away, to rebuild, to redefine yourself after someone tries to erase you. And the beautiful part? Once you stop waiting for someone to save you, you become the one who saves yourself. The car legal aid clinic was already helping its third family that day. A woman with 2 children escaping a landlord who hadn't fixed the heat in months. One of our new attorneys was walking her through the paperwork, making her laugh despite it all. I watched from my office window earlier and thought Genevieve would be proud, not just because we honored her legacy, but because we expanded it, turned her name into action, turned pain into progress. And maybe that's what this whole story was about from the start. Not revenge, but reclamation. Taking back what was mine, my peace, my voice, my future. I still teach part-time, Tuesdays and Thursdays, room 12, Maple Hill Elementary. And every time one of my students hands me a spelling test with trueth instead of truth, I smile. Because truth does have an extra E sometimes. It's earned, it's elusive, and it's everything. Sometimes I get messages from people who heard about the trust, the clinics, or the will. Women mostly, some whispering their confessions, others screaming their triumphs. I finally left. He took everything but my self-worth. She always told me I was dramatic, until I showed her the paperwork. I thought I was alone. You're not. That's what I want to tell them. You're not alone, you're not stupid, you're not broken. You were used, and then you rose. And there's no shame in that. Only power. I lit a candle on the balcony table, a small flickering flame in the soft night air. Next to it sat Genevieve's framed photo. Black robe, half smile, that no-nonsense sparkle in her eyes. The photo we used at the clinic's dedication. I spoke out loud to her sometimes, not like prayer, just gratitude. Thank you for seeing me, I whispered, even when I couldn't see myself. And I meant every word, because sometimes one person believing in you is all it takes to start believing in yourself. Even if that person enters your life late, even if they're not who you expected. The porch light flickered once, then held steady. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A door closed. Life, going on. And me? I wasn't frozen anymore. Wasn't haunted. Wasn't hurting. I was home. Finally. There's something powerful about telling your story. It's how you reclaim the parts they tried to bury, how you stop the bleeding and start the healing. So if you're listening to this, from a quiet room, from a borrowed couch, from the middle of your own storm, hear me. To anyone who's ever been used, dismissed, or discarded, you're not done. You're just getting started.